We are here in Crooked River State Park in southeastern Georgia, right next to Kings Bay. You can walk through the woods and see a submarine. And it's New Year's Eve 2014. And so I'm asking everybody here, for my friends in Wilkes and all over the world, to introduce yourselves briefly, if you would.
Speak, Wendy.
My name is Wendy Clarissa Giger, and I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm with Fellowship of Reconciliation and Quakers and Pax Christi and the International Thomas Merton Society.
Yossi McIntyre from St. Augustine, Florida.
And a world traveler.
And a world traveler.
I'm Martina Linehan, and I live in Florida at the Sustainable Living Center, and that's the work that we do.
Nancy O'Byrne from St. Augustine, Florida, and I'm coordinator for Pax Christi, Florida.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Rump. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida. Peace.
Very cool.
Bruce Gagnon from Bath, Maine.
Bob Cushing, local pastor, Waycross, Georgia, but Pax Christi, Georgia.
Hey, I'm Lucy Fuchs from Brandon, Florida, and I'm with Pax Christi.
Frank Fuchs, Brandon, Florida.
Denise Laffin from either Atlanta, Georgia or Newport, Tennessee, and the Great Smoky Mountains Peace Corps.
Ellen Utsumi. Buddhist monk.
John X from Planet Earth.
Hey,
I love that.
David O'Byrne, St. Augustine, Florida, with Nancy O'Byrne, and basically her chauffeur.
Lee Breyer from Ellington, Florida, Pax Christi, Florida. Just south of Georgia.
Ann Richter, another Pax Christi member from Clearwater, Florida.
All right, thank you very much. Ellen Thomas, formerly in front of the White House. I just passed around a flyer that I wrote in 2009 when my husband Thomas died. And I asked for half an hour today because I've got a couple of things that I want to talk about. One is, while we were out in front of the White House in 1993, we brought an idea to the voters in Washington, D.C. called asking the U.S. government to commit itself to abolishing nuclear weapons if everybody else does, and to use the money that's saved instead to shut down and clean up the nuclear weapons industries, which arguably would be nuclear power and uranium and everything, the whole entire nuclear chain, and to use it for cleanup and for converting the arms industries into things that are good for people. And as over the years, since 1993, it became apparent that what we should be converting the arms industries into is mass-producing carbon-free, nuclear-free energy. We've got the technology, we just don't have the manufacturing ability at this point enough to make it inexpensive for people. And during World War II, they converted the car industries to making tanks and the ship industries to making warships. And they converted them back again after the war, well, maybe not the weapons, but the other parts, the cars anyway. And we can do the same thing if we just have the mindset, and if we earmark the billions of dollars that are going into it. How many billions of dollars are supposed to be spent in the next 30 years? Is that 3 trillion or something like that on nuclear weapons alone that they're talking about? I mean, this is insane. And you talked eloquently, Bruce, about conversion, and we all understand that. So you should be aware that this is the most recent version of it. Nuclear Weapons Abolition and Economic and Energy Conversion Act that was introduced in 2013. It was the latest version. It was one that Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and Jackie Cabasso of United for Peace and Justice and Disarm and other Western States Legal Foundation and other people had input into this. And this version of it asks for a commitment, a global commitment by 2020 in solidarity with the Mayors for Peace campaign. Next, we're starting to talk to Eleanor Holmes Norton about the 12th iteration, and I'm actually asking you as activists to seriously take a look at this bill and help us fine-tune it, because we're not, even though Raul Grijalva, who's the chair of the Progressive Caucus, signed on to it, he was the only one who signed on to it last session. And we've only gotten a total of 15 co-sponsors over the past 20 years. So if there's something that, I mean, it's a statement of purpose, and other bills have to be developed that get more specific. But it's a statement of purpose that if it comes from the United States to the rest of the world, then all of this craziness that's happening can end. We call it Proposition 1. The first idea is to get this statement of purpose out of our country so that people will be less afraid of us and be more willing to negotiate. So this flyer is on the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom site. It talks about the bill. And Carol Erner, I don't know how many of you know Carol Erner? Yeah. Well, she's quite a remarkable woman who's been with WILF and also with Friends Service Committee. And
You look a lot like her.
I know, everybody.
What's your last name?
Erner, U-R-N-E-R. She asked me to say hello to everybody, and she was really pleased that Bruce was going to be here and talking, and she's a strong supporter of WILF. I mean, of Space for Peace. And I don't remember what I was, oh, well, she recruited me. She recruited me into WILF before Thomas died. And WILF has been a real help to me since Thomas died. It took me a while to make the transition from being a DC Uber activist to living in a very private spot in the mountains of North Carolina. You know, it's like culture shock and grieving. My mother died, and so it took me a while to climb out of it. And what has kept me going is going to events like this and being involved in Alliance for Nuclear Accountability DC Days. Have any of you been to that? What did you think of it, Bruce?
You know, it serves its purpose. I always found it a little too sort of conservative,
Yeah.
but you know,
We're still working on them, trying to get them to go for complete, you know, for Norton's bill. We haven't gotten them to support Norton's bill yet. But it's still good to get together with them because they do a lot of really good work in educating people.
Yeah.
But I wanted to let you know about this, and I also wanted to let you know about the fact that this year is, or 2015, tomorrow starts the year of the 100th anniversary of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom.
Wow.
And the campaign for this year internationally, the international group came up with Women's Power to Stop War. And we in the USA section said, well, apparently we don't have a lot of power to stop war because we haven't done it yet in 100 years if we haven't stopped war yet. So we've sort of shortened the slogan for the US section. Women, stop war. Or men and women, stop war. So, and there are going to be people gathering at The Hague just at the same time as the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Conference, unfortunately. So Carol Erner will not be at the NPT this time. because she's representing Wilf. She represented Wilf US 50 years ago when they met at The Hague, and now she's going again. So, yeah. So I want to talk up this wonderful woman. But I also want to ask any of you, would you be interested in becoming a member of WILF? It's really easy to do, and I can sign you up if you want to sign a piece of paper. I'll be glad to do it. I'm co-chair with Carol of the Disarmament Wars Committee, and we do a lot of stuff. And it's a great, and we really need some WILF chapters in the Southeast. And we need to recruit younger people, and not just women, also. We have men in WILF as well. And so we could use your help, so I wanted to appeal to you to think about that. And I also, as part of the nuclear chain situation, I wanted to share these 2 flyers with you that are put out by Beyond Nuclear. If you don't have them, they're really good information flyers.
Have we finished talking about the bill?
No, we can talk about it as much as you want. Like, I'm opening it up for questions now.
Oh, I mean, I don't understand this in accordance with District of Columbia Initiative. I don't know what any of that is.
District of Columbia Initiative 37 was the initiative we brought to the voters and won the election, actually it was asking the Congresswoman to introduce a bill into Congress.
It was a referendum.
No, it wasn't. Well, referendums are usually instituted by politicians, and then you vote on the bill. But an initiative is instituted by the people themselves, and DC has that right there. Over 20 states or cities that do allow voter initiatives, and it's something that we encourage people to try to develop, because it's a wonderful way. You talk about walking, Bruce, well, and sitting in front of the White House was a wonderful way to reach out to people, too.
Is there a website that
It was a lot
describes
easier than walking. Yeah.
So what's the website?
www.prop1.org, prop1.org.
So that describes the District of Columbia's initiative measure?
No, this
That's
is
what I don't understand.
Tell the history, tell you how you did this.
I mean, is that written up on the website? Like,
Yeah, if
people
you go
read this,
to
they'll say me,
prop1.
well, what is that?
If you go to
But I have no clue what it is.
prop1.org, and when you read the initiative, there's a link to it, you know, it's blue, and you click on it and it goes to it, and you read the bill, and you read the co-sponsors of the bill, and you know, all of that is on that page, that home page. Yeah. But the initiative was, we collected 25,000 signatures on a petition.
I just don't know what it says, what it is.
I'm telling you.
Okay.
We collected 25,000 signatures on a petition asking the Congresswoman to introduce legislation into the U.S. Congress calling on, at that time, the U.S. and then the USSR, or no, the former USSR, to agree to abolish their nuclear weapons and use the money instead to clean up the mess and to convert the war machines and to provide for human needs. That was the initiative, and it won 67% of the vote. Much to everybody's surprise, because there was no, and it's because there was no advertising other than a few blue and white posters that we put up the week before that said, vote yes on 37, and didn't say what it was. And the media didn't catch on to it until the day of the election. And so people walked in there and they read it and they voted for it because they hadn't heard about it.
Because it was written in plain language.
Yeah.
They understand.
Yeah, it was great.
That's not fair, that's cheating.
Yeah. So.
What does WILPF mean?
Women's International League for Peace and Freedom.
Okay.
Started by Jane Addams and her cronies.
Who also founded social work. Was the founder of social work.
And that came out of Chicago, right? When I was in Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago, yeah.
Was it Chicago?
I think even in our little town where we are, Will has been very, I think, done a great job informing voters ahead of time with their suggestions for the voting, what would be, to the benefit of people. And so that's been given out by a lot of people in our community. This is in Stark, Florida.
Isn't that League of Women Voters?
That's League of Women Voters.
Oh, it might be. I was thinking of Will because I was more.
Women's International League of Peace and Freedom. Each country is a section, and within the section there are branches, and the branches are 5 or 7 or more people who get together once a month and do actions together and have certain advantages because they're branches. And then there are, I was part of the DC branch when I first joined, and then I moved to the mountains in North Carolina, and we don't have a branch there, so I'm an at-large member. But one thing that's really wonderful about them is any member can apply for a grant for a project that you're working on. And I did that and got funding to help me do a tour of the country in 2009. They gave me $2,000 to help towards that, which was wonderful. Yeah.
Well, you know what happened in Kansas City.
Oh, yeah, when I came to Kansas City on the way back, we met Ann Solentrop, who's with Physicians for Social Responsibility. And they were just fighting the new, or just became aware that the new nuclear weapons plant was going to be built there, and they were trying to figure out what to do about it. And after they heard about the bill, the initiative, the voter initiative that we had in DC, she and PSR decided to launch an initiative campaign in Kansas City. It wasn't successful at stopping it, but it was a wonderful way to educate people, because people in Kansas City didn't even know it was a nuclear weapons plant. They thought it was something.
Because it's the non-nuclear part of it.
Yeah.
It's the non-nuclear part of the
Although
weapons.
it's nasty, and it has 2 streams running beside of it, and the chemicals that were released into the water and the ground. It was terrible. Yeah.
Would Hillary Clinton and Senator Elizabeth Warren be members of this group?
No.
They're not members?
I don't think so. No. We'd be delighted.
No, I was just wondering whether they were members.
If it was appropriate, I wanted to tell a little story about Women's International League of Peace and Freedom. When I was about 15 years old or something, that the local chapter where I was living, where I was going to high school, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, had a contest of about, I can't remember exactly what the topic was, but it had to do with should we have dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So and it was an essay contest to write about that. So I wrote an essay about it and put it in, and I won. There were only 2 entries. So not 2. But from that, I got a $50 certificate. $50 I think was the prize or something like that, and I could join them on a bus trip up to New York City for a demonstration that was surrounding the disarmament talks that they were doing at the United Nations.
Oh, wonderful.
So it was my very, very, very first piece of activism and my very first demonstration. And I went on this bus with these women, and it was just great. And there was the first time I ever saw the pictures from Hiroshima. And because there were displays, there were many, many, many Japanese people who had come for a special session on disarmament. That's what it was. And I don't remember which one it was because it was my first. But anyways, the first time I saw that, there were Japanese people. I got a little peace crane pendant from that, and because I thought people I don't even know, and they're giving me little gifts. I thought that was so exciting. The whole thing was just wonderful, and my poor naive parents, who didn't realize where it was going to lead, had been so excited about me to go and had driven me to the bus so I could go with these, and didn't realize where it was all going to lead. But that's a
Fast
activism stuff. I remember it was a local chapter of Women's International League.
What year would that be?
Oh, I guess it would have been about 74, 75, 76, somewhere in there.
Yeah. And I'm co-chair of the Disarmament Wars Committee, which covers everything from nuclear weapons to all kinds of weapons and drones and keeping space for peace, but also the Nuclear Free Future campaign, which is to end get rid of the nuclear power, because nuclear power plants produce nuclear weapons grade material, whether it's plutonium or enriched uranium, and they are destroying the environment. So it's a very broad. It's the biggest committee with the most members and the most funding. And so we are able to get things done and help other people get things done. And so I urge you to join. But also there's an environmental water committee, there's a human rights committee, there's a Cuba and Latin America committee, and women, and so it's whatever interests you have, you can plug into, and each of the committees have monthly phone calls, and then I think it's 3 years, there's a big gathering, convention, where everybody gets together and see each other's faces, and it's a wonderful group, so I encourage you to join. Yes?
Could you speak a little bit about the time that you spent outside the White House?
Sure.
And about the other woman there,
Concepcion.
Yeah. And just how that experience was for you.
Well, Concepcion actually is still spending part of every day out there.
Wow.
She's in the process of having to find another place to put her stuff and spend the night, because the Peace House is closing down, but and she could use some help with that if anybody's got any ideas. William Thomas started the vigil June 3rd, 1981, and she was going down, and he was there 24 hours a day. We started out with a sign saying, "Wanted wisdom and honesty." And Connie was coming to the signs every day to protest personal issues. And they both got arrested and ended up side by side, mostly talking about Thomas's issues after they were, when they came back, so that one of them could sleep while the other person was awake, and could warn each other that they were, that the police were coming. I came along 3 years later, and Thomas and I hit it off, and we were married within 6 weeks in front of the White House. And I gave everything I owned to my daughter, who had just graduated from high school and went out with a backpack. And for 7 years, we didn't have a roof over our heads. We just had friends who let us come in and take showers, and we spent, we'd stay out until we couldn't stand how we smelled, and went and took a shower. And it was challenging. It was very interesting. It was it woke me up to God. The reason that I did this was, I had always been concerned about nuclear weapons, but when I met Thomas and I sat down and listened to him for half an hour, and something went in my brain, like turning on the computer or opening up a file or something, and all of a sudden these dreams that I had had since I was a small child came rushing into my head. I had dreamed about this man, his voice, his words, his place, the way he looked, the way he sounded, everything, since I was a kid. Well, this was a shocker, and this, of course, changed my life. And so I quit my job and joined the vigil, and we got married, and Connie never liked me after that, but
When I saw Ellen speak at one of Arjun Makhijani's big training workshops, and she'd been in the back row hiding behind her camera the whole time, but you're obligated to make a presentation. So when she dressed up for a presentation and she put her scarf on her head, I had this Shazam moment, and so when the question period came, I said, "Are you Alice of Alice and Elma in Doonesbury?" And she goes, "Well, I used to come out to the park and draw a lot, and I always thought it looked a little bit like my profile." But you remember, they got married at the bus station, right? And all those, the kind of humorous.
The only time he ever came to put us in the park, he had Elmont sounding like an idiot. You know, the drums were going. They did get that right.
The drum did.
Yeah, we drummed 40 days and 40 nights during the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
Wow.
Drove George Bush crazy.
Ellen, could you say something? Ellen, could you say something about just the normal day in and day out communication with the public, and just give some sense of how you felt that impacted people?
Yeah, well, the Park Service came out with an estimate that in the 1980s, when they were trying to tone us down, we had great huge signs and lots of them, and we were attracting a lot of attention, and so they changed the laws so that we could only have 2 signs per demonstrator, no higher than 6 feet off the ground, no bigger than 4 feet by 4 feet, no thicker than a 1/4 inch, and you had to be within 3 feet of the signs at all times, and you couldn't have more than a certain amount of stuff with you. So that happened over a period until 1986. So during 1985, it was pretty wild. But the Park Service estimated that about 3 million people came to see the White House every year. And so a percentage of those saw the signs, and a much smaller percentage of those would stop and talk. And then there were the people who lived in D.C. who walked through there, and they would walk through the park or drive past for weeks or months or years, and then all of a sudden one day they'd stop and talk, and you know, I just finally had to talk to you. And the signs were about abolishing nuclear weapons and trust God and disarm everywhere.
Live by the bomb, die by the bomb.
That's Connie's, yeah. She's a negative sort of person. Yeah. And Proposition 1, I had that meticulously drawn. If you go to the Proposition 1 campaign on Facebook, there's some pictures of me painting a sign that I'm sitting in front of the White House.
But now the vigil is a stop on the freedom of speech
And
tour,
has been
right?
for
It's
a
the
long
freedom
time.
of speech example, you know, that the tour guides point out.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, but it wasn't all that free. You know, I spent 3 months in prison charged with camping. Yeah, and yeah, it was a good experience though.
What a scumbag.
Scumbag.
She discovered that garlic and peanut butter are a tasty combo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I lived on it for a couple of weeks. Yep, and I climbed a tree and stayed in it for a week because one of our cronies was, this was still in 1985, and there was the Community for Creative Nonviolence, CCNV, was trying to get a shelter for the homeless, and they were staging these tent cities, these Reaganville tent cities in the park, and one of our friends, and there had been ruling by I think it was the Court of Appeals, against the Community for Creative Nonviolence. And so I painted a sign that said, "Welcome to Reaganville 1984, where sleep is considered a crime." And it was on a 4 feet high, 8 foot long piece of plywood we got out of an alley with paint from an alley and so forth. And there was this one fellow that was a friend of ours who was running for president in front of the White House. This was a presidential election year. It was in October. And so he was gone at night, but in the daytime he came and lay down in front of that sign on top of a sleeping bag and pretended to sleep until somebody would stop by. and then he would sit up and tell them what was going on. And so he got arrested, and he said when he went to court, he got arrested for camping, and when he went to court, he said he wanted to represent himself, that he didn't need a lawyer. And the judge said, well, you do need to have a lawyer, and I'm sorry, and he appointed him a lawyer. And the lawyer said, well, he should go to St. Elizabeth's for evaluation, 30-day evaluation to see if he was sane. And so he went there and he continued to non-cooperate, peacefully non-cooperate. And so they got a court order allowing them to inject him with Prolixin, which is made of jellyfish poison.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I decided, okay, I was going to have to do something about this. So CCNV was encouraging people to do actions on behalf of homeless people, you know, get arrested for things in order to raise consciousness. So